Good day, guys. Austin, and in this one today, it's time for a bit of EMU-NATION, which means that we're covering everything to do with emulation, front ends, gaming, and just about anything else that takes my fancy. So, in today's one then, first off, emulation news, Cemu. Jeepers creepers. Cemu always knocks out updates, and I'm constantly looking at these more or less every week. However, this week has been blown up. They've got some huge new advancements, so I'm going to be looking at detail in that one. Elsewhere than in emulation, we've got the 3D NES emulator been updated. DeSmuME has got some new little additions to its well-established emulator. Nintendo 64 and Sega Saturn have got some huge news. In the front-end world, LaunchBox, as per normal. These guys are covered every week, just like many of the features I cover. However, if you're a big player and you're doing big things, you get into this. So, without further ado, let's just get stuck in. Right then, first up, the emulation news, and today is no different than every other, more or less, episode I've knocked out of this. Cemu has had some huge progression, and I mean huge. They had a bit of a lull there for a couple of weeks where they didn't knock anything out, and then over the last couple of days, they've just been smashing out build after build. Now, don't get me wrong, they're quite incremental, but the first big release from them, which is 1.5.5, has opened up so many new possibilities and boundaries in terms of how the emulator works. First off then, this is from the developers themselves. They've added game profiles. So basically each game that you launch, you don't have to configure it to each game. You can hold the profiles and how you want it to run for each game, which means that then problematic games, which need a bit of tweaking every now and again, can now run without any issues whatsoever as long as you've played it and configured it earlier. Now, the actual emulator comes with pre-configured games to a certain level, so the most popular problematic ones will just work straight out the bag, which is absolutely awesome news. And obviously, as this emulator develops, there'll be more profiles added, there'll be more tweaks done, more fixes, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, and before you know it, this will be the entire catalogue, which brings me on to the next bunch of stuff, which is actual playable games now. Now, from the popular list, because to be honest, I'll be here forever if I go through every game, but the main players, Super Smash Bros. Jeepers creepers, I was not expecting this. Smash Brothers is now more or less fully playable. There is minor bugs in the text at the beginning and small graphical glitches to do with most of the shadows, but trust me guys, this is now fully playable, and if you've got a rig that can handle this kind of game, 100% playable, and I mean having an awesome laugh how it was intended. Now, elsewhere we've got Bayonetta 2 also working. Now, this had too many bugs for me to be any kind of playability whatsoever. Now, minor glitches, that's about it. Awesome settings. Mario 3D, absolutely superb. No problems whatsoever beforehand, and if anything, it's just improved day after day. I'm finding huge improvements, in fact, with the actual loading times of the game, even surpassing that of the Wii U. And that goes for Mario Kart also. You know, I can now play these as was intended on the Wii U, but now even faster. Absolutely crazy. Elsewhere then, Splatoon. Now, Splatoon is probably, you know, fully playable graphically. The only hindrance I'm finding with that one is the fact that if I transform into the Splatoony, I don't know, ink thing, whatever I can't remember what it's called, but basically when that happens, there's a slight increase and decrease with the audio. So it's not exactly, you know, breaking your earphones or anything, but it becomes quite annoying after a time. But yeah, considering how far this has come, what do you expect at the end of the day? Elsewhere then, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, for me, I had to beef up. I had to put this on my big rig and overclock it. Speed is an issue with this. But if you've got the kind of PC that can handle this game, then you're pretty much in luck because this is now playable. There is some big glitches knocking around here and there, but trust me guys, this one is now a playable game. And, well, what else can we look at? Wind Waker HD, yeah, of course, but at the end of the day, you can play that on Dolphin, you can smash it up to 4K res, and you're not exactly missing on much anyway. Pikmin 3 working, I've not found any bugs on that, and so on and so forth, guys. The games catalogue for this emulator is just getting silly now. It's getting to the stage where it's increased so much that this is almost classed as a fully working emulator. This is absolutely crazy. I mean, what? This is less than a year old, and already we have come so far. So that's the Cemu. That is there. You can download it at your free will. It's only on Patreon for now, so if you're a paying member, then you can download it as much as you want and play to your heart's content. I believe that the other incarnations are now available on the actual official Cemu website. All the links down in the description down below for you to try out. But as always, if you're not a paying member, you still get it for free, but you have to wait 7 days to get your mitts on it, I'm afraid. Elsewhere in the emulator world, then we've got the 3D NES emulator, which emulates the original Nintendo console. And, well, this has been awesome. I've covered it before. However, this has just had some frequent updates. Now, the developer over there has now got this up to version 1.B3, which, to be honest, is not really giving much of a changelog to go after, and after me delving into it, I can see some slight improvements and twitches here and there, but they're not exactly groundbreaking. However, something that I have noticed is the way he's implemented the actual, I suppose you can call them configuration files. Now, each game can be configured to look however you want. That's the whole idea behind it. So giving it a 3D look can be completely different for everybody. Of course, it will load as standard, but then you can tweak it to your heart's content. Now, what's been breaking this one through is the fact that more people are getting involved. The developer has added a forum so anybody can, well, kind of share their configs, and then somebody can take their config, tweak it, add to it, polish it off, get the entire game finished, and, well, that's how it's been working. But the public seems to have been, well, jumping all over this like a madman, and the configs now are almost all for every game, which means that you can basically load this one up, smash a load of configs in there, which are called 3DN files off the top of my head, and, well, you can game without any hindrance whatsoever. And to be honest, it's a pretty damn good experience. I mean, I would probably now choose this over any other normal Nintendo emulation. It's absolutely awesome what they've managed to, well, break through with this. So hats off to the developer over there, but most of all, hats off to the actual public for pushing this further on. So links in the description down below, guys. Feel free to join in, give it a try, or do whatever you want. But for me, this is hands down an awesome Nintendo emulator. DeSmuME then, the Nintendo DS Emulator. Now, I just released a video to cover all this in detail and show you how to get the most of it. But just for you guys who haven't been up to speed, there has been, well, quite a lot of enhancements. Now, off the top of my head, I cannot remember what it's called. I think it's the R482X or something, or maybe the XR24. I can't remember, but roughly about a year ago, whatever, there was an update to the DeSmuME. It enabled HD, well, scaling, to be honest, so it brought more HD artifacts to the actual game. So you got a lot more detail, and it wasn't so pixelated when playing it on the big screen. Now, that was some time ago, and people have been playing along with that. However, recently, not just yesterday, I mean, like, recently, the developers have actually been including a lot of this stuff into the emulator. Now, this is open source, so anybody can work on it, and the X4, whatever it was, that was a fork from the original build. Now, the guys who are all involved in it and into this scene, they've incorporated it, but they haven't just incorporated that build. What they've done is they've taken it further, so now you've got the HD scaling, and now you've got HD texture scaling also, which are huge players. Incorporate this more reliability, less bugs, more compatibility, and overall better features brought to it. The DeSmuME emulator has come a long way. So if you haven't updated this emulator in a while, jump all over my video. Make sure you do update it because it's well worth the hassle. Right then, and this brings me to the, well, big news at the moment, and there is some newcomers to some older systems. Basically, first off, the Nintendo 64. Now, there's been no chat about how or what route this is taking. However, there is rumours on the horizon that the Nintendo 64 emulation will be taking full advantage of the new Vulkan API, which means that, well, when we've seen this implemented on the more recent emulators such as the Xenia and the, I don't know, the PS3 kind of stuff, it's been taking it it's been absolutely groundbreaking because it's taking emulators which were struggling because of the sheer power of the systems and the lack of compatibility. So they were getting maybe a lot of compatibility in terms of the graphics, but then it would have to trade off for the actual frames per second in the game. Now, the way Vulkan works is it streamlines the entire process of bringing your frames per second to the screen and enables you to run more complicated tasks at the same time. So when you incorporate this with an emulator which has been struggling for all those years and having to use workarounds to get games working, now we're getting awesome Nintendo 64 emulation. This means that now the Nintendo 64 emulators theoretically can now work using a completely different process, so it's actually emulating the games as was intended, and it's not having the trade-off anymore of having the 2 frames per second, because although yes, this is a very dated system, the actual emulation of it is very complicated, and it's far too complicated for me to talk about in this segment. However, trust me guys, the addition of Vulkan coming into the N64 emulation world, it's good news all around. This means almost full compatibility and great speeds to go with it, and that is awesome news. Okay, and the last one for the emulation scene. A big player, an emulator with big boots, EMUNATION. Now, I'm terrible with pronouncing my emulators, names of people, all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure it's just EMUNATION this. And what they have been doing is an awesome job on some amazing systems. I mean, EMUNATION runs a hell of a lot of systems now, and again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. However, they are well known for actually emulating all those systems very, very well. Now, a new addition to the EMUNATION scene is the Sega Saturn. Now, we've seen some huge breakthroughs with the Sega Saturn stuff in terms of the actual hardware being able to be, I don't know, cracked to be used in different ways. So no longer do you need the actual disc in the future. You can actually just run them from your memory cards, because one of the hindrances of the Sega Saturn is the lack of lifespan with the actual, well, laser inside the drive. So now people can run from backups. That's absolutely awesome news. But this is now trickle-fed into the emulation scene, which is absolutely outstanding. And now we're seeing more of the emulators actually using some of the technology which is used in this to bring it to the emulators. So Sega Saturn is now playable on the EMUNATION emulator, and that is absolutely awesome. It's very much early days, but even in these early days, a big chunk of the games is actually now fully playable. Of course, yes, there's plenty more to go. There is a hell of a lot of bugs and glitches to go along the way, but in the short space of how long this has been enabled actually on this system, absolutely unbelievable what they've done. For me, it's all about Burning Rangers. That was my favourite game on the Sega Saturn, but if they get that working, then, well, I'm happy. But to be honest, all round, this is awesome news. Right then, and this brings me now onto the front ends, and first up we've got LaunchBox. Now, again, this is just like Cemu. I talk about these every week, but that's because Jason Carr and his team over there have been working tirelessly updating this. It's like a full-time job, literally, for his team. They just work on this tirelessly, answer your requests, get things done, and constantly moving forward. Now, the other day, 6.7 was released, and again, I did a tutorial for you guys to take full advantage of, well, many of the highlights that was released in 6.7. One of them being the integration of Rocket Launcher. So now, if you've got Rocket Launcher already embedded onto another system, you can take full advantage of that setup and just transfer it over to the LaunchBox setup, which is it means that you can set up systems that you've already got set up for another front end in seconds. Absolutely mind-blowing. It also means that it's simplistic integration, so you can add more and more systems using the Rocket Launcher launcher. Rocket Launcher launcher? That's a crazy word. Now, this sounds like it's overcomplicating things, and in theory it is, but this opens new doors. Basically, LaunchBox is an awesome front end, but when you start getting to the nitty-gritty of some of the more complicated emulators out there, you can see its flaws. So, the integration of Rocket Launcher takes a lot of those, I don't know, inadequacies out of there. Now, Jason Carr hasn't just added this, but he's also looking into it even further. Now, what he is trying to do at the moment is, I don't know, build bridges between him and the Rocket Launcher team, as well as build bridges between his front end and the actual Rocket Launcher program itself. So, it's hard to explain, but what I'm seeing in the future is the fact, hopefully, if both parties can handshake, that both the front end and the launcher can also shake hands, have a push-pull request, so you can control Rocket Launcher through the actual LaunchBox interface, which means that there's no complicated setups, a lot of it is done as standard, there's no messing around, and it takes full advantage of one of the major gimmicks of bringing yourself to LaunchBox, its simplicity. So, well, although it's harder for me to explain it like I am now, probably just waffling on, it's actually awesome news all round, because this means there's new horizons in terms of, well, front ends working with our emulators and being able to build that relationship between them to make it easier for us guys to just get gaming at the end of the day, because that's what all this is about. Us just playing games, and that's what all these emulators and front ends enable us to do, enjoy our games with a modern twist. So yeah, that's it, and best of luck to all of them. I will be keeping tabs on you all, so I hope that a good handshake is made. Well, that's it for today, guys. That has been, well, one lengthy EMU-NATION today, but I pull no punches when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's been one hell of a flood of emulation and front-end gossip going on. It's only Tuesday at the end of the day. Well, it is in my country, and it's early on in the week, so there could be lots more to come. Who knows? But I will keep tabs as always. Please keep tabs also on my channel. I've just released a few guides. There's still a lot more to come. There's still stuff that I need to edit and upload, stuff that exactly you guys are waiting for, and I'm pushing to actually give you. But please like, please subscribe, please do all the things that people normally do on this YouTube world of golden, diamondy, glorious stuff. But most of all, guys,